Great. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here for our session. And we're going to talk today about the power of intentional instruction. And we've got a few different ways where we're going to prop that up and get into some activities with you, some engagement, and then many examples for you to take away as we go, as usual. We want to make this as useful and purposeful as possible. So just going through, there we go. Quick introductions. I'll go first, and then I'm going to have Carrie go, and then she'll go into the first section. I'm Brett Christie, and I'm VP for Learning Design and Inclusivity at O'Donnell Learn. Been in that role about 1.5 years now, and before that, about 25 years in higher ed. Went up through faculty ranks, worked as a faculty developer at the campus level, and then at the system-wide level for the Cal State University system. All sorts of efforts related to teaching, technology, student success, UDL, accessibility, inclusivity. I'll stop and turn it over to Carrie.
I'm Carrie O'Donnell. Brett and I are partners in crime, and we really have a lot of fun with that. Brett comes from the academics side. I come from 30 years of being a learning designer and running a learning design firm. We have about 150 learning design professionals plus 70 employees at O'Donnell Learn. And we are really thrilled, and we've really enjoyed taking the learnings from this team and the hundreds and hundreds of faculty that we support every year and bringing them out to you and sharing with you. But today is going to be a little more interactive, and it really hits to my heartbeat, which Brett's heartbeat is UDL and mine is active learning. So let's go, Brett. So today's topic is intentional instruction, and we're going to talk a little bit about the RSI standards, and that's going to, and how to implement them, requirements. But it all starts with, and everything intentional starts with humanized, inclusive, and engaged learning. And this is our company's 100% dedication and commitment. So that all has to start with the learners. And this graphic shows today, the new now and today's learner. And we try to put this in our top of mind. We share this, we've got it on our screens all the time, and we keep it top of mind. But you start with the learner's context, their challenges, their needs and motivations. And then if you're completely committed to humanized, engaged, and inclusive learning, then intentional instruction comes from behind. Brett, you can go to the next one. We care so much about this that we created a framework. Brett and our learning design team, with a little bit of my support, created this framework called the Purposeful Learning Framework. And if you look at this, on the left-hand side are all the elements of what we think to be kind of the pedagogical elements of what we think to be an effective course. And intentional instruction is really important there, as you can see. But on the right-hand side, and this is the reason you need intentional instruction, is to humanize the course, to build your class as a community, to make your course accessible, inclusive. And so it's something we focus a lot on. We've created this framework. We have some tools we'll introduce later, but we have a lot of open education resource tools. And then we've also built our own proprietary tools and services around this framework. So everything we do is grounded in research. And of course, Brett ensures that our framework and all the tools we create are grounded in evidence-based practices. But we also do a lot of market research ourselves. And if you see the next slide here, you can see that. So in the last 3 years, we looked out at the market and we said there's about 40,000 support teams, folks, people, professionals, experts to support about 2 million faculty across colleges across the country. And that includes instructional designers, educational tech support people. We're estimating 50,000. That's just not enough. So what we tried to do is say, how can we help to create some scale and help to make it easier for those incredibly important people to scale what they do and increase their capabilities and capacity. So we started conducting research with thousands. We've conducted research, qualitative and quantitative, with about 1,000 faculty members, academic leaders, and support teams at universities across the country. Pre-COVID, we did this study of 170 provosts and academic leaders. And at that time, they told us how important evolving the learning experiences. And you'll see that almost ubiquity, it's important, but 72% said very important, which is a very high number if you've ever done any Likert 5-point surveys. So to the next one, we talked to faculty right post-COVID in the, you can go to the other one, Brett, first, or Molly, the one we just had up. So we asked them post-COVID to what they do to, what their approach is and at comfort level with designing online. At the time, about 42% of the faculty had either only taught 1 to 2 terms, which means COVID, remote, or not at all. We asked them how they designed their courses, and almost half of them said they mirror their face-to-face course. And then we asked them their confidence level in teaching online on a scale of 1 to 7, with 7 being highly confident, and the resounding answer was 6 out of 7. So almost half had little experience. They're using a rather unsophisticated way, which is mirroring your face-to-face course, but they're very highly confident. So how do you support faculty in that condition? Because faculty are experts, and we need to support them where they are. Now, the other thing we did is we asked them how much time they spend on designing their courses. And this is really interesting. Approximately how much time do you dedicate to each of the following? Prepping a first-time course, 49 hours. Prepping an existing course, pre-semester, 23 hours. But this is the very interesting thing. Faculty told us they spend about 8 hours a week in iterating and developing content and activities and assessments for their courses. This is not teaching or grading. This is actually prep work. And so we started looking at that and saying, that is an awful lot of time. How can we make faculty more efficient with that time? And how can we support them to use that time most effectively? So in this same survey, by the way, this survey had about 500 faculty, 470 faculty from across the country. We asked them how they spend that time. And if you look at this graph, okay, this is the percentage of faculty who focus on each of these activities as they spend those 8 hours. As you can see, adding content and assessments, of course, are a big part of that time. But you know, engaged and active learning falls way below content type activities. And faculty did not tell us at this point that they are focused on humanizing the course or intentional instruction. So moving forward, so this was in fall of 2020. Now in 2021, we put together a design panel to help us design our new solutions. It includes 40 faculty and 40 administrators and academic leaders and academic support team. And on the left, we showed them the purposeful learning graph, the illustration I showed you before. We asked them to point what resonates most with them, what are they most concerned with, and what do they want to focus on? And as you can see, intentional instruction, active and authentic learning is really important. And also, mostly all of those elements that make the course humanized and available for every student in every context, which means that intentional instruction is really important. We also asked them to talk about it. We did a lot of qualitative research, and this is a good representative quote. Making personal connections with students and demonstrating genuine care for their well-being has been the only strategy I've found to address this. That's the pain points of teaching today, with moderate success. But this is difficult with large classes. So that's the research we've done, and I'm going to turn it back to Brett to talk a little bit about where this goes next. And then we're going to do some active learning.
Yeah, that's coming. Kind of setting the tone here with some information, some background, some data, a couple more examples here, and then we'll really get into RSI, which was in the description. I'll explain what that is in just a moment. But first is a couple really interesting pieces that came out this fall looking at technology versus behavioral, because we're really talking about the behavioral of the faculty member and what they do in preparing and delivering their courses, interacting, doing all those things we would want them to do effectively for students. And so some of you may have seen the article. Let's look at the Chronicle article at the top right that came out, The Damaging Myth of the Natural Teacher. This is something that I've witnessed over decades, where you take a great scholar and you put them into a classroom and you assume that great things are going to happen or that they will become a good teacher. That's not necessarily the case, as many of us know. It's something that takes dedication, it takes skill, it takes awareness, it takes knowledge, preparation, all of those things. So it's not just the expertise that resides in someone's mind, but it's really all of those things that can be done to connect to the learner. So that's an article I really highly suggest, and that just came out in the last month. And then don't blame technology. This is from Inside Higher Ed. This is another angle on that where we can't just blame the technology. It's about the preparation to be able to teach effectively. So to this day, most doctoral programs by far do not include any pedagogical preparation. So people get their in-depth research expertise and content expertise and then come out to teach in most cases, but aren't prepared to do so. So this has a lot of examples and case stories from people who've been through that experience. And many of them are now really well known as leaders in teaching effectiveness and faculty development. So those are two articles I would say are great current resources on a couple angles on the same perspective that we're talking about today. And related to those, what we learned through the pandemic, what we're experiencing is limited instructor knowledge of effective teaching. That's made it really difficult for people to transition into new modalities. They haven't been able to take that with them. And then that lack of mapping to how students learn, that intentionality, that transparency, being unfamiliar with online instructional design, and in many cases, or most cases, not having taken a fully online course as a student, so not having that perspective as well. And then needing more focus on the student experience, and then lack of support or recognition of all of the above. So those are some of the things that we've seen. Okay. Transitioning, so some of you in the chat, maybe you can let us know in the chat, how many of you have heard of regular and substantive interaction, the regulations that have come out from the Department of Education? So some of you have, definitely.
Oh yeah.
It depends on your role. If you're an instructor, maybe not as much. If you're somebody who's managing programs at more of an administrative level, then certainly so, particularly for online programs, obviously. Okay, great. Thank you for that pulse check. So let's do just a quick level setting on RSI. So these are the new Department of Ed regulations as far as the new standards, and these went into effect July 1 of this year. And these apply to all online courses for which students may use Title IV funds, so federal financial aid. And it says may use because it could mean current students are using those funds or maybe not, but they would be eligible to. So it does apply to those courses. And there needs to be what's called regular and substantive interaction between students and instructor. I'll give you a visual that kind of portrays that, and then I'll give you a quick pass by on some of the do's and don'ts, and then give you the resources and let you go there. And then we'll get further into intentional instruction. So the DOE can review those distance learning offering at your campuses and see whether or not they should get those federal funds. Are they meeting the standards? If you wanted to go to the final regulation docs, the link is here on the slide, and we can get that to you in the chat as well. So just really quick background context on the regulations. That's the boring stuff. And then here's a graphic looking at lower left, and I want to give credit to SUNY, the SUNY system, for developing this graphic, and we've adapted from that. And so we're looking at the lower left is where you would have sort of the lowest level of performance would be your correspondence courses, where you're having students just go through content on their own, take assessments. It's automatically scored for them, and they just get grades. You might have just recorded lectures, weekly announcements with due dates. Those can all be important things, but they should just be elements of the larger picture, which hopefully is tipping toward doing graded assignments with feedback on the right side, giving weekly announcements explaining content, doing recorded lectures with discussions, or doing live lectures, of course, but it can be recorded lectures as long as you have discussions integrated with that and resources, as long as you have office hour opportunities and touch points there. And then, of course, active and authentic learning is always the goal, the ideal, when you can engage students as much as possible, as frequently as possible in real learning and those opportunities for feedback, formative assessments, et cetera. So that's just a graphic to give you a little bit of a share on what that looks like on a continuum. And then just to give you a sense of how RSI frames it. So this is what's called initiated by the instructor, because that's what the interaction needs to be, is mostly initiated by the instructor. So You're going to take part in initiating and guiding an array of interactions. So it might be post-discussion questions for active facilitation that you're engaged in with your students, providing individualized feedback, not just a score, and then asking students to contact you during office hours, and then of course being present, being available for that in multiple modes. And then focusing on the core subject. So you're going to contribute students' progress continually. You're going to send messages previewing concepts introduced in upcoming units. Those can be announcement messages. They can be things that you send out at the beginning of a unit. What I think is the greatest thing that you can do is bumper videos for your modules or your units. If you look at somebody like Michael Wesch, if you look at Karen Costa's guidelines, that's the high bar. What RSI is looking for is sort of your bare minimum standards, and these are the examples for you here. Posting a current event that ties to the topic, so bringing that in at the time of them going through the module. And then one example of a tool that we can offer you is this early term feedback survey, and this is one that's called out in the RSI regulations, and this is a best practice, is how can you check in with students, let's say at the third week of the semester, and get their feedback on how things are going for them. So you're actively soliciting feedback and interacting with them, and you're getting input from them, and then you can put that into action. So those are steps on how you can meet RSI, but we're going to now tip further into intentional instruction, which goes deeper and beyond that and gives you more examples on how to do that in a model way. Exactly, Sarah. Michael Wesch and Karen Costa, thank you in the chat. So what we have for a brief activity is we're going to have you just go to a Padlet individually and briefly, and then just share what, if anything, is your institution doing to ensure regular and substantive interaction. And then what, if anything, are you doing? And that's going to be based on your role, but to make sure that RSI is addressed for those that are teaching fully online. Where do you feel there's most concern or room for improvement or issues? So we've got a few things propped up there on the Padlet, and we'll just spend about a minute, maybe 90 seconds, having you process some of your responses and just narrating over those as we see those populate.
Right.
Training, absolutely. And you can offer training, and you can have different formats for that training. Is it one time? Is it sort of continual? Is it a boot camp? Is it a faculty learning community, professional learning community? And tied to that training, hopefully there's going to be some sort of incentive for them to be able to do it. Somehow it's factored into their workload, or they're doing it outside of contract and being able to give some support. Maybe there's mentoring or staff support, an instructional designer that's working with them to make changes as they go through the training. So it's not just training and done, but it's hopefully iteration through the training and beyond. Job embedded UDL professional learning, that's one good example, absolutely. A lot of things that UDL can offer across what we're talking about today. Authentic assessments, we're going to touch upon that. Informative assessments, absolutely. Active learning. Yeah, learning management system. Whenever migrating to a new learning management system, that is a big move and a big opportunity as well to do things as you're going through that process. How can you impact change as people are kind of retooling in a new system?
Yeah, this accessibility as a concern and room for improvement or issues, it's interesting. One of the things I mentioned earlier, the design panel, but faculty have told us pretty loudly that the area that most impedes their ability to evolve their instruction is their concerns about accessibility and not really knowing how to make what they do more accessible. Over reliance on PDFs, they know that that's not accessible, and so it's just that comes up a lot with faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Looking at course syllabi, evaluating and starting from there, maybe looking at the learning outcomes, how they're written, how they're mapped to activities and assessments, all sorts of opportunities there. Timely response. Yes. Students need feedback. They need timely feedback when it's actionable. Absolutely. That's a big part of RSI and intentional instruction. Educating faculty, about teaching effectiveness and all of the things involved.
By the way, we have a whole bunch of faculty on this webinar. And if you have any comments of like what you think the institution should do to support you on this, throw them in the other comments. Be nice for a few moments.
Great. And Michelle, scroll up just a little bit in the chat and you'll see the link. There it is again to the Padlet. Great. Sandy, we'll get you
a copy.
I'll Slack it to you, Sandy. Send me a message. Great. Okay, let's hop back, keep things going, and let's tip forward a little bit more into what we've been talking about, intentional practice. So Carrie, back to you.
Great. So the first thing we think about is cognitive load. I mean, one of the things that happens with students is that there's too much going on, and on the screen, on the voice. I mean, we often get these PowerPoint decks that are just so dense with content, and students have a really hard time consuming that. So research demonstrates the benefits of chunking on minimizing cognitive overload so students can process information more effectively. When teaching online, we can't rely on that in-person ability to break up lectures spontaneously. And we need to simulate these breaks or transition through the way we organize our lecture and our instruction. So that's kind of the first piece of intentional instruction. Now, the second piece is that we have, there's a lot of research that demonstrates the benefits of chunking. And this illustration shows what chunking is. So rather than doing a 45-minute lecture with a discussion at the end, the idea of chunking is to interweave small lecture segments, 10 minutes, maybe 15, with, and we're trying to keep ours shorter, with learning activities. So this one shows you a lecture and then they have a poll. You might have peer learning, self-reflection, discussions, etc. So this is how you can simulate that in class and spontaneous experience of breaking up the lecture with a little bit of discussion or conversation. The other thing that we think about a lot when we think about chunking, and particularly in a virtual and hybrid environment, is the effective use of video. There's a lot of research that on videos in the student learning mix. Universally, they show that students stop watching video lectures after less than 10 minutes. They don't engage with the types of lengthy lecture videos that are often used in online courses. So on the right are some pointers for designing these videos and lecture segments. And if you read these briefly, you'll see that they're all about humanizing, building your presence, and creating a video that's targeted to your specific student audience. This holds true for synchronous video, synchronous streaming like we're doing here, as well as for video segments. So there's also a lot of research that shows the importance of and the efficacy of active learning. So in chunking, you intersperse lecture with active learning, or that's one of the things you can do. Faculty and students have an implicit bias that the lecture is more effective, and this is a misconception. So this research is, this slide shows a meta-analysis of 225 STEM studies on active learning, comparing traditional lecture versus active learning. And you'll see that active learning increased student performance, and it also helps the students that are at the margins the most. And that's really important for inclusivity. So the other thing we think a lot about is authentic learning and how to enhance the course with authentic learning. Our designers often support faculty to replace lecture with authentic learning. So this is a good example. This professor is a CIA agent, ex-CIA agent, and in her live class, she frequently brought in her CIA colleagues or buddies to come and talk to the students and have these great interactive discussions. But online, she wanted to replace that with something that would create that student engagement. So we suggested and worked with her to create it with an authentic activity. And in this activity, students work in teams to build the President's Daily Brief, which we all have heard about recently. Their task is to each team of students creates the brief, and in 1 week they present it to POTUS, and their colleagues act as the director intelligence analysts in grilling them and asking them questions about that brief. So it creates a group activity, which is really important to prepare students for the world of intelligence. And it also creates authentic learning. And then, of course, like all authentic learning, it's graded with a rubric, which enables you to take some of your summative assessment and make them a formative assessment. So the last thing I want to show you in terms of some of the tools that we do for intentional instruction, this is a document or that we've created that is based on what was that from Louisiana State started a similar document, and we've evolved it and added to it. It's techniques for remote and active learning. It shows you a whole bunch of active learning techniques that you can do. Think pair share, polls, muddiest point. You may have used some of these or all of them, but this shows you how to do them in different remote in environments and in distanced, in class, fully online, and different remote. So I'm going to turn it back to Brett to lead an activity. What we want to do now is we want to model the kind of chunking that we're showing. So we're going to use breakout rooms in today's webinar, which we don't usually do. So.
Great, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, and the breakout's going to be brief. Don't feel like we're going to push you away for 15 minutes and time's going to drag on, and that's not what you came here for. But we're going to do about a 5-minute breakout. And what we want you to do is brainstorm some strategies for enabling, supporting, and recognizing intentional instruction methods across your institution. And I'll talk about how we're going to do that. So we're going to put you into rooms of 5. Think of somebody as a facilitator, just somebody who can kind of keep the conversation going forward across the topics that you'll see. Somebody who can kind of do some timekeeping tasks if you want to look at about a minute or so per topic. That's roughly what it'll be. That's quick. So just kind of jot down ideas, free form. It's going to be a Padlet. And then recorder, that's the person who can do the typing into the Padlet. So they're focused on that task, and the others are contributing and doing whatever they can as well. So try and fall into those roles quickly. You can introduce yourselves briefly. Sorry about the jumping on my computer here. So we've got the breakouts happening. The Padlet link just went into the chat. So we'll get that. Go ahead and jump to the Padlet, and then we'll push you into breakouts here any second. Okay. So as you saw, the Padlet 10-15 minutes ago worked just fine. The second one, for some reason, the Padlet.com website had crashed and was not available. We had tested our own Padlets. They were fine. And I went through other browsers and we found that it's the Padlet website that for some reason just happened to crash as we were trying to use it for our group breakout. So instead, let's just go through the prompts that we had related to enabling, supporting, and recognizing intentional instruction. So how can you work to facilitate collaboration? What would be training ideas that you would offer? What particular topics? What would you exemplify? What sorts of policies or standards? So let's start with collaboration. What collaboration ideas does anybody have?
And by the way, if you want to speak, we can you can unmute yourself because we're in a meeting format. And by the way, Brett, for some reason the Padlet works on mine. I think because I had it open earlier, so I can type it into the Padlet if people want to give us their ideas.
Okay, strange. I even tried a fresh browser, so I'm not sure. Okay, great. Giving you a little bit more lead-in time to gather your thoughts. Thank you. Everybody's going to be able to more actively contribute that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we were a little concerned about that with even this webinar because we thought, oh gosh, we're kind of jumping people right into this experience, and we didn't want to give it. By the way, guys, I agree. Our team was just getting into the whole conversation when we got pulled out from the snafu, but these things do happen, so maybe modeling that too is part of it.
Yeah.
One thing came up in ours. Todd, I think, suggested that you're really incentivizing faculty to participate in your webinars and your training activities, and then also to provide really tight, digestible, and easy to use templates when they get there, so that it makes it easy for them to actually create these practices. And I think some other people are doing it as well. What other ideas have come up? What other strategies are you using?
Just to add on that,
type it or speak.
Yeah, go for it. But to add on that, Carrie, yeah, incentivizing people, it wouldn't be just for seat time attending a webinar, but giving them an outcome or a task or something that they're going to change to their course. So there's a deliverable. So attach the incentive to the deliverable, not the seat time. That would be my recommendation.
Tom, you're totally spot on. The fundamental mind shift of faculty. What we're hoping is that some of these strategies can help us to create that mindset shift. And it's very hard. So guys, throw any ideas you have that have worked for you.
I like, and Heidi's suggestion as well, creating templates is another good thing. And so those can be templates for individual assignments and tasks, rubrics, checklists, whatever they might be for peer review. And that's kind of what our main thing is we create a lot of templates and resources for instructors to adopt and adapt. So they don't have to create from scratch. They don't have to start from square one and start thinking about and figuring out how to do something. They can take something and adapt it best to their use case scenario. So we definitely do a lot of that. Yeah, Tom, yeah, we're not going back to the way things were prior. It's definitely how do we do things differently and find ways to take advantage of that. Yeah, and Josh, your question about what kinds of incentives do you offer faculty? I mean, I can speak to 20 years of faculty development experience, but what are others doing as well? I see stipend, maybe it's a partial buyout, depending on the scale of what they're doing. Could be a stipend for course design, course redesign. Absolutely. Maybe they've gone through an institute to do some significant changes. Maybe it's targeted on accessibility or UDL or active learning, whatever it may be. But however you're able to move them forward on those objectives that you've set for your training. And those can be tied to institutional initiatives.
So in our group, Michelle Hitson and Catherine McCormick described kind of similar initiatives where they did what we call at O'Donnell, learn while doing, where you bring faculty together and they learn about the best practices of intentional instruction, and then while they're building their courses. So they're actually building as they learn, and they're sharing with each other and collaborating. And the key is modeling these best practices. Some of the folks here have been participated in our Jumpstart boot camps where we've done that. And we really try hard to get faculty to be in the shoes of the students and see it so that they can know how to design it into their course. And that is a lot of fun, by the way. It really is. Faculty really enjoy it, and we enjoy it. We have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we love mixing the synchronous where they're together as a cohort, but then they've got asynchronous where they might be working with the designer and working individually. We give them some flip tasks, and then they come back to the next module for synchronous again. So that's been the model that's worked best. And I see Mindy's comment about sticking to Zoom for workshops. I think that can be great. And you can also have it be both. Some people in person, some via Zoom, of course. And then you have those recordings you can leverage, and you can chop them up into distinct elements if you wanted to, or examples.
Nora, I love your whole peer learning. Peer-to-peer is what drives engagement for faculty, right? They want to hear from each other, from their trusted colleagues or just other people that they know, they don't even know. Yeah,
I see Sarah's dig about cameras off, faculty with cameras off. We're all human. We have reasons why, and there's some great research about why students keep their cameras off. And it's important to know what those reasons are, and how for URM, underrepresented minority students, there are specific reasons that are more significant. So it's an interesting conversation. Love showcases whenever you can showcase those outcomes, prop people up, and then create them as mentors.
So I think it's time to turn to, I think we're going to end this by just sharing with you about 3 things that we do at O'Donnell to advance intentional instruction, some of our tools and services. So the first one is that, and some of you have been to our other webinars, and you'll know that our purposeful learning framework is available. It's there's a page on our site for it, and it's available in Merlot. And we provide some tools that are open out there. But one of the rules, can you move up, Molly, to the purposeful learning one before this, please?
Yep, that's me. It's
Oh, sorry, Brett.
still thinking.
Oh, your computer's
Okay.
okay. So what we did is we looked around and we said there's a lot of evaluation rubrics for online courses, but what schools and our clients and partners have told us over and over again is that they're really looking for a roadmap for faculty success in teaching in the new now normal that's hybrid and virtual often. And so we created a purposeful learning check, which is a self-check that faculty can take to actually evaluate their course against the 8 elements in our purposeful learning framework. And then what they do is they do that self-check, and then they have a one-to-one consultation with the designer. And that one-to-one consultation creates a collaboration that you don't get when designers just go in and try to tell faculty what to do or what they think they should do, because part of the purposeful learning check is a reflection on the point of view of the faculty as to what I would like to work on and how I would like to improve the learning experience for my students. And so what we do is we ask them to come to the meeting with 3 things that you could enhance. And then we can create a contextualized strategy for intentional instruction, because intentional instruction is going to look very different in a biology course than it does in a web design class, right? So what we can do is the one-to-one designer can work with them to really build their strategy. And that's one of our tools. So the next one is we create something that we call the course design kit. So one of the things that institutions really struggle with when you move to online and virtual and hybrid instruction is creating consistency, standards, and process. And with RSI, you're being asked to do that and to do it intentionally. And again, with the intent of building intentional instruction in, what we do is we create these kits, and they're kind of a combination of some standards and policies with ideas, showcase, with some tools and templates for consistent styles and conventions. We build our templates in the LMS, could be Canvas, here it's Canvas, best practices, and a showcase. So we put it all into one kit, and it's like a 50-page document, but it's really easy for you to navigate and find what you need as an instructor, and it helps to set that consistency across the campus. The third thing we do is we really are concerned with supporting faculty to continuously iterate and teach. And our large design team does lots of program design, build a entire degree program, or design, work with faculty, support faculty to build all the gen ed courses online. But we recently have launched and had a lot of success with a program called Faculty Concierge. And this is a program that allows faculty to have access to learning design professionals and to support and tools and templates just in time, anytime, 24/7. And we include a combination of proactively outreaching to faculty and saying, hey, you told us that you need help moving to developing high fidelity assessments. Let's talk a little bit about how your assessment strategy is working and how we can help you to redesign some of your assessments. That's an example. Or a faculty member may come to us and say, gee, I'm really looking for help with assessments. What we put behind our concierge agents, our concierges, tend to be experienced faculty who are trained to do this by us, but they also have resources and tools and templates behind them. We've got a platform we call Nectar that's behind this. And they also have access to our specialized experts for implementation support. So if you want to do, we have a tool for a discussion that works really well in a foreign language course. You might work with one of our implementation experts who will actually put it into your learning management system for you and help you with that. And then we also align with institutional services that you've got on your campus and your institutional team. So the idea is just to be there for you all the time and to be an extension of the arms and legs of the Center of Teaching and Learning and the online team and the academic tech team. So those are three of the things we've done. And we want to hear from you if there's other things that we can do, because we're very interested in, again, helping to close this gap between not enough people and experts and professionals available to support all the faculty as we try to accommodate RSI, as we try to improve the learning experience for our learners, meet today's now normal, and really advance intentional instruction. So that's that.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And yeah, continue on in the chat, please. Any questions or comments? I think we're sort of caught up there. And what I'll do with the time remaining is just give you notice about our next webinar, which is coming up in 2 weeks. So that's on December 1st, and I see the registration link is already there for you. And we're looking at pump up the feedback through formative assessments. I know there was a question at the beginning of the session, and I've lost it in the chat as to who it was from, but asking about student data. And we've done a little bit of student data gathering, but I did a lot of that in my former role across this Cal State system with thousands of students and their feedback about online courses. And always they wanted more engagement, more active learning. That no matter how good the course was, they always wanted more of that. They wanted more feedback. So formative assessments is a great way to do a lot of things that are critical, and including providing that timely and useful feedback, so that the focus isn't on grades, on larger assessments, but it's more about feedback and the process. So we'll have that session coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll send you a reminder about that as well. I see Stephanie put a link to a survey there, a brief survey about this session. And then we're open for the next few minutes for any other questions that you might have. I know otherwise people will, I'm sure, need to move on to their next meeting coming up here at the top of the hour. We really appreciate you being here with us today, and thanks for holding on through the technical difficulty with Padlet there toward the end.